I think things seem to be sort of clarifying a little bit. I think. So yeah,
in what sense?
Sort of big pieces around the competency work, and I think we're starting to see how we can get that moving. I think we've got a path there. I think the things are lining up. We just need people to do stuff now. I know what stuff we need them to do. I don't know how to get them to do it. That's the next hurdle, isn't it?
That's the hard bit, Ian. Getting anyone to do. There's only a limited amount of people that are producing anything. That's the hard bit.
We were talking last week about passports for supervisors. So it's a health and safety drive. I was part of it, but they are looking quite seriously to increase the number of modules that Black Hat supervisors need to do before they can sort of do their stuff on one of our sites, from 4 to 12. So that's a trebling of sort of training that's going to be offered and mandated, all online through M-Site or one of the induction type providers. But I think that's a recognition that we need to be part of this. So
it's good to try and capture that so that we know that that there's a bit of consistency around, so they're not having to do a slightly different one for Balfour as May. So if you can capture that a supervisor's done this level of training, what we can translate would be good, because otherwise it could become quite onerous, couldn't it?
I will. It's topics rather than stuff, Ian, but I'll capture the topics that are covered. But I think it's a positive thing, and you're right. It needs to be more joined up. But I think it's a positive thing that our organisation has recognised that we can't just demand this. We have to help or offer it as well, if that makes sense. Yeah.
What about the CSCS card? I mean,
I think I get the impression, Mark, that people are waiting for that, but I don't see it coming. I don't see it happening.
We had a meeting with them about it about 2 years ago, and whether anything's changed. The sort of not in your lifetime was pretty much the message that I took away from it. So we've developed the competency passport stuff with MPP, which effectively just overlays the card. You don't really need the card to do it. You just need a mechanism for the card to be carried through your reader. So the competency passports, they say MPP is a cracking system. They use it elsewhere. Cheapest chips to run, nice and simple. So it's not. It's sort of, in a way, I think CSCS are probably going to miss the boat, or by the time they get to the party will be over.
It's frustrating, isn't it? And it goes back to that theme of we're very good as an industry of inventing new platforms for everything, which in essence just waters everything down. I mean, there's a platform sitting there. Why can't it be used? Or are they quite happy they're getting the revenue in that they want to get, controversially maybe? And I don't know, it's craziness.
It's more a question for Build UK, that one, Mark. You can ask them about it. They've got more direct involvement with CSCS than we have. We tried to take over our own cards. We sort of went to have a play to set our own card scheme up, but we were told in no uncertain terms that whilst there's many that exist, there can't be any new ones. So anyway, it was going to be a CSCS Intel Inside type thing. So they weren't going to sort of revolutionise or change, but we wanted to do all the development work we've done with MPP with CSCS in mind at the front of it. And we just cut off our knees. But I still don't understand by whom. It was a CLC missive. I don't know who on the CLC or how the decision was come to. We were just told no.
I was at a workshop a few weeks ago, and I was talking with. I was asked to go in and talk with a small group that was meeting from the Institution of Construction Management, Institute of Construction Management, the ICM, and they're doing work on competency. So in other words, sort of supporting the new standard on competency. And they they're quite keen to move that forward to make that part of an insurance-led or supporting insurance premiums or whatever. I don't know whether you'd.
It's been recorded, hasn't it? I've got to be.
Oh, sorry. No.
Do you know what? I don't know is the honest answer. I'm sick of people trying to own competency. That's the bit that's winding me up.
Yeah.
So yeah, and I felt the ICM I think are doing some good work, but the first correspondence I got with them was seemed to be a veiled threat to say they were going to sue me for trying to use the word competency in the context of construction because they patented it.
What?
Yeah, I told them have fun with that. But yeah, I think there's a little bit. Again, there's too many people trying to own it rather than do it.
Yeah, definitely.
But they are doing some good work. Greville Walt, what's it? I can't think what company he's from now. One of the main contractors doing some good work around trying to unify the stuff on cladding. In fairness, so there's some good work going on through that.
I think he's Waits.
Motivated to do what?
I think he's Waits.
He is Waits. You're right. Greville from
Yeah.
Waits.
Yeah, I think that's the thing, really, Ian. It's a matter of encouraging people to do stuff, and not, as you say, trying to own it. It's a matter of bringing it together, rather than, because I get this all the time where people try and discourage you because somebody else is doing it, but actually when you then query it and drill into a bit more detail, you find that no, they're not.
Or they're not doing it very well. Yeah.
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 Yeah. All right. Shall I just do a recap then of where we got to, because it is the end of the year. This is
Yes,
the last one
please.
for this year. So it started I think we started talking the end of last year, but we didn't start having the meetings until January, February time.
Yeah.
And the contractual work stream that the initial idea was that we were going to advise upstream and downstream people how they were going to be impacted by the Building Safety Act and the Golden Thread, and what life would be like for them in the future, and give them some joined up thinking about how they could be better prepared for it. The legislation that came in, but we never really got into that, or we never really produced any, or there was no outcomes from it or outputs. But the conversation then started, last 2 or 3 sessions, is more veered towards what would be useful is some sort of library that asset owners and asset developers could start, a joined up library could start using and deploying and benefiting from. I think that's where we're ending up or heading towards now.
I think that's an output that we can do quite easily, which would be good. But I would also say that I think the work that we've done over this last few months, in particular around the contractor design portion, I found particularly helpful.
Yeah.
Because I think we started the year without any clear way of addressing, the gateways, for example. And I think through the conversations that we've had, we've identified that the contractor design portion does need to get moved into an earlier work stage. And certainly from the conversations I'm having with people, we're pushing at an open door there.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think, and then what we've also done, which hasn't yet turned into something that's an output, but the conversations that we've been having around what the challenges are with that, and also some potential solutions to it, in particular the things that Paul has done. I think we've got a vehicle to actually turn that into something that is meaningful. So I think it is a bit more than that, Martin.
Yeah.
I think, yeah.
No, I appreciate that. I did have other things on my list, George, but
Sorry. I
But not all of
apologise.
those.
Sorry.
No,
Yeah.
no. And also, one of the things I think we have done is, because we've been talking, we don't just, I don't, and I know other people don't just talk to the people on this call. There is other groups and other sort of collaborative things going on, and the message is permeating out from the conversations we're having here to other forums, should I say.
Yeah.
Did we all catch the construction news announcement last week? I think it was. Do you want to tell us about it, Paul?
Is that the passive fire knowledge group? Yeah.
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 But is it PF? What is passive?
It's
PFK.
the PFKG, and it's nothing to do with anything in Korea, by the way.
It
It's a bit
sounds
of a,
like a terrorist organisation. It really does.
No, Ian's laughing, but even not speaking for Jarvis team, but we all had this sort of debate at the time. It sort of like sounds like something out of North Korea, but it's not. It's not at all. The PFKG. No, it's a good thing, because I think you said it yourself there, Martin. Look, everyone's got this. There's such a big issue, I think, with skill sets in the industry, anyways. Everyone's got different bits that go together, and I mean, I'll show you a few of the bits in a second, just on some of the stuff we're working around on process as well, because it kind of fits nicely into the conversation. It's that you've got to get the industry to a point where, because you've got things like the fantastic purple book that comes out from the FIS, as you know yourself, because you're the perpetrators of it, about how you do part 3 penetration seals. But when you look at the whole system approach, that's the panacea. It's getting people into doing that. So we're kind of looking at trying to get basically like a passive fire code of practice, not just one, because I think there's loads of individual ones out there, maybe for part 3, maybe some stuff around linear gap seals and some other bit, but there's nothing that encapsulates the whole thing. Like I sort of said, it needs like a CIBSI code M, like a commissioning code of the industry for how you manage passive fire from cradle to grave. And most of that, to be honest, is touched on in the purple book, Ian, and for the rest of you not seen it, but it doesn't go as far as the whole approach like it does in code M's. It's like a hybrid of combining that into a massive sort of thing. And what I do is, if you want, I'll quickly just show you that slide deck so you can see it in a bit more clarity. Just tell me if it comes up, because one thing I'm not doing at the moment is sleeping very well, obviously, because I've got a throbbing foot, which doesn't really help. But if I just do this quickly, it's come up. That's good. If I just move you off of there and just try and do that, that's it. Here we go. Just go back up quickly.
So are you saying we're benefiting from your throbbing foot?
We weren't earlier, were we?
Do you know what it is? It's all fine until you sit down to try and sleep, then it just like it niggles. It's like,
Yeah,
it's one of those, It's all right. It's anything's better than it was before. Trust me.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that's the 2 documents. Obviously, that's the one that came up before FIS, which is Ian, Joe, and the rest of ASFP, BISA, all and obviously BISA and that. So, and the code M one is basically regulation 44, how you commission buildings, which is all part of it. And I think this is a diagrammatic, which, if you've not seen it, it was about getting things into a very similar flow to what was done in Code M. This is what we kind of presented at the Build Expo when we launched it. So you can kind of see it about how you actually look at getting your purpose group right. It's how you do your risk groupings, and how you do your seal and descriptive groupings. Then how you manage it during, this is all about like the things we issued previously, Martin, on discrepancy, adequacy, statutory matters, change management. It all kind of kicks back into it, and it's getting these things right about descriptive changes and actually prescriptive changes. Because the way I've kind of tried to pitch it is that if you describe it properly and it's adequate for what you were doing for for the intended risk class of the building and the space, then you can't touch that once it's set. But you can mess with the prescriptive, because all you're doing is you're selecting products around that descriptive. And this is where the CDP thing becomes a bit difficult. So what I'd say is not to go into too much detail on. That's the product library one, George. What I want is, that's that one. If I just come out of that quickly, so if I come down to, where is the Trallon Hamlets one that I did for them? Hold on. Excuse me, this is it. This is the better one. So that's what you've already seen, but this is the way I tried to describe it, and I sent this over to you, George, as well, so you can have a look at it. Is that you need a whole process about how we sort of manage it all, cradle to grave. That's a big thing. So when you get into refurb and someone's changing thread later on, because I think one of the things you said, George, as well, we've all heard it. Everyone's going about they have the golden thread,
Yeah.
and it's like actually they don't. They have a digital record, or they have something that looks at it at the end, or does something with O&Ms. It doesn't do the whole description of it from cradle to grave, and that's the hard thing, because it's about products. It's about how you get those products completely right from day one, and how they go into a system approach. So this is what we do at the Build Expo. We said, look, if you look at it in context, you've got the fire safety type of the building, the space risks. So it could be sleeping, it could be high rise. There's obviously a fire risk in all buildings, but you look at that, it could be a student block, it could be a residential block, it could be a care home, it could even be a commercial office, it could be wherever it needs to be from principle. Then you've got to look at the operational, the system types within that building by risk space. So some systems might be static, like fire dampers. They sit on a wall, they may open and shut, or they may just shut, but they don't move. Whereas a fire door's transient because you're going through it, if that makes sense.
Yep.
And that thing you were talking about the other day, George, which is good, because you've got Doc M, you got Part Q, you got all these other things that go onto a door, and it's about how those things are procured at the right time. Then you've got things like smoke control or sprinklers. They're all dynamic. They perform a function. But once you understand what that is in relation to that, then you can start looking at what the relative classification is for that product. Once you understand that, then you can look at your supporting constructions, and you can look at how you install it. So what we kind of try to depict is that when you look at the relative skills that you have at the moment, this is kind of what I think kind of goes on. That you might have a fire engineer who's been relied upon to do this. This is out of you can't see the bit at the bottom. This is out of the knowledge field, is the blue bit. They should be doing this part. Then you got an architect, you might do the wall side internally, but it won't be on anything prescriptive, because procurement is someone's procuring it later, but they'll draw the walls out. Then the services consultant should do this, but they've got no knowledge field in these areas. They're just going, it's a smoke control system, or it's a sprinklers, it's all CDP. Then you got, not to throw us all under the bus, but you've got the principal contractors that are generally throwing risk down the line, or pushing it upwards or pushing it sideways. Generally, they're not designing anything themselves. Then you've got specialist trades, people like BG, or say BD, I'm naming BD was a great contractor. You might do walls. You might have a company that does fire damper installations, but they don't know anything about this. Then you've got the product suppliers who can tell you a classification number, but they can't tell you the fire engine. And the same people that supply the wall like BG can't tell you the relevance of this to their wall. And that's kind of the issue that exists. So you can kind of see as you walk through it, or where that bit, the gel's missing in the middle, which is
that's where the breaks and the golden thread happen, isn't it? Really,
yeah,
to carry on the analogy.
So in order to get to that, you've got to have gone through that process, and what that tries to depict at the top is a method of going through it all. That when you get onto subjectology of each individual part, you can describe it. But that's the problem with describing it at the moment in CDP terms. No one's actually. We'll have someone go to a damper manufacturer and go, can I have a fire damper? Or someone goes, can I have a door, please? And they'll go, what do you want? Well, I just want a fire door. And they go, okay, here's one of these. But they've got no knowledge of this area of it all. You don't know what that performance of the door is doing. Because even fire doors, if you've got them in corridors and things, they're still down to have the air brakes as well between certain compartments for smoke control. They're still performing a function for that, but they're transient. So you have to understand the whole system. So in order to get down to the rest of it, which is obviously understanding your prescriptive information of how you install it, your workmanship, your regulation 7, how you benchmark it, you've got to have done the first bit. So this is the kind of bit where you look at it and you go, well, the CDP element kind of falls down, because you're in a situation where if you put on a wall in, all these different parts that sit around it are generally by someone else. It's the whole procurement of how that comes together as a system that's the problem, which is that flow chart above. And I kind of said that when you look at it, you've got a big passive fire code that leads it. Then you need workbooks for individual subjectology where you can go through. And this is the big key bit that's missing. I know, George, this is where there's going to be a big reliance, I think, on BIM for housing. But this is getting this bit completely right in templators, so we understand what that asset information is and how it's recorded. Then you can do your builder's work. Then you can get your record of your builder's work done. And one of the things that you can't do is have all the builder's work on one schedule. You've got to break it out by typology. And the common denominator is having common walls that it all goes into, but referenced on a schedule. So you can actually record what that product was, and that all that really is. You can't see the detail of this because it's just too much to go into. Is that put on that, so you can then record what you're putting in at that builder's work location. The commonality being the support of construction with a wall reference to reference it, because the common denominator is that the smallest, so the biggest thickness of requirement for this is going to lead to thickness of the wall. There's nothing you can do about it. If you're procuring it out of sequence, we know all this stuff anyway. We're going to get into trouble. And that's all that really is that that's where we kind of got to on that kind of working thread. And what I'm trying to do at the moment is put together the bones of actually writing a bit of a pacifier code around it. But the big bit's going to be is that getting that digital side right, which is getting all of the parameters in, George, which is, sorry, I might have gone past it. This bit here, that's the big bit. I'm kind of missing the workbooks, which you've all seen copy. I've sent you all those workbooks, haven't I, previously, guys? The Excel files, yes, you've got those. But it's just having that in a constant flow, and you can see what's, to get this right, we're going to have to get the whole code right, and the bits that lead out of it for each individual subjectology to bring it back in, because the skill set, it's not actually just with any one person, it's with individuals that needs to be brought together correctly, rather than misprocured, you could say.
Yes.
How's that?
I feel like I should give you a round of applause, Paul. I think the way that's been pulled together is exceptional.
It's a lot simpler than putting up. If you remember the Excels, that's what I keep sharing. If you remember the Excels are like I forgot. Yeah, I've got one open here. The Excels are a bit like mind blowing when you look at them. You start going into trying to put that into perspective for someone. You're not going to digest it, are you? This is going to be for consultants to kind of follow through.
Yeah, most definitely. I think the point is that it is overwhelming, but the reason for that is that it is bloody complicated, right?
Yeah.
And therefore, by doing what you've done, then it's then a matter of bringing it back to make it simpler, isn't it?
It is, and this is one you'll like. I'll send I'll just tell me what you want, and I'll send all this content over to you. So I've had a bit of a couple of weeks trying to get ready for this up. So I did this for LSBU the other week for the BEng students in I think they're in the first year of their BEng honours, or the last year of the H&D. But it's just the whole thing around, the client wants a cup, what's in the documentation, all leading back out to that previous stuff that we've done there, mine. And you go, well, the contractor's priced that, the PQS has bought this one, the planning requirements and statutory requirements indicate this, but the salary image is that. And it's getting away from the fact that people are still trying to push to get what they priced into the job. So they'll give back 3 handles to the PQS only to find they've got to put 2 back in later.
Yeah.
You're still seeing it going on, all of that, you still see it. But you need a mechanism to try and get to that right conclusion from day one, rather than this lot all have a bit of a conversation, you could say, about who's priced what.
Yeah, and what does it include? That's the point, really, isn't it? To have an explicit set of requirements that you can then test everything against.
It always falls back to that. Everything that Malali case, it always comes back to this, and it's in different it always comes back to it. And if we're following this for golden thread, you're not going to get it wrong anyway, because you always end up with what's statutory required. And in this particular case, it's the cup with 2 handles, because even though they got a cup with 1 handle, you might have a problem with your hand, you need 2. They just don't want to. Contractors don't want to give that one straight away. And I see jobs at the moment where people are fighting to keep this, and I'm going, it's this one. You can't get away from it, whether you priced it or not. You just got to get on with it. So
I've sent something through this morning that is I've not even had a chance to properly look at it, but one of my mates from Pinsent Mason sent it to me this morning, and it's talking about new EU legislation that is going to require information about products to be correct, and if they're not correct, it will there's unlimited liability apparently. So whatever that means. So it's just feeding back up the line to enable product manufacturers to know. Product manufacturers need to know where their products are being used.
Yeah, they do. I think that the hard bit is, George. I mean, I had it with one of the consultants recently where they've gone to Mandic, who's a great company, and asked for a damper, and they've got one, but it's the completely wrong piece of kit because they've asked the wrong question. So
Yeah.
the thing is, it's like there's so many different variances on space type, wrist type, and wall types that the manufacturers just can't do it. It needs like you kind of got to force people. I think force is probably not the wrong word. I'm not too sure here, but you've got to give the platform so that when everyone gets together in like this is why I'm trying to do this passive fire platform, is that at the end of stage 3 you've actually got your descriptive, right? So you've set yourself on the journey, because I think the biggest risk on discrepancy, adequacy, statutory matter is that if you come out of gateway 1 and you've not got the shape and form of the building set, you pointed it out very rightly on the Trouse thing, is that they'll get you at gateway 3, it will come back to haunt you because that's where it will come up. They want to spot it. No one's got the knowledge to spot it in between. There's very few of us that will be able to do it. And even when you do spot it, people think you don't really mean it, do you? So
yeah.
Used to be a swing, didn't it? That analogy you have got with the cup with 3 handles.
It
used
did.
to be a swing. How
used
the
to be
client envisaged it, how the contractor priced it, what they ended up with. It was variation of a theme.
I've dumbed it down, the swing, but it was the swing. It absolutely was. I try to do it. The cars are always a good analogy as well, but I thought the cut with the handles is better because you explain it. It's hot fluid, and you can't touch it, and you still want to sell it, and you've got to look at people with disability with their hands and things who can actually hold it, and
How very woke of you, Paul.
I tried my best.
So we want to move on then, George, to the library idea, which seems to be gathering momentum.
Yeah. What I'd also like to just talk about for a moment, just to build on what Paul was just saying there. I'll wait until he comes back actually, because he'll hobble away. But one of the things that we've been doing just this last week is we've been working with PRP on a live project that we're doing for Peabody, and what we're trying to do is to align the context in which a product, a door, is being installed in the building with the fire strategy. So to be able to see visually where the fire compartments are, but then be able to relate that back to assets. And this is literally something we've just been experimenting with, and we're going to show it to them tomorrow. So that's the active plan spatial model there, and you'll see here that we've got these are intelligent objects. So these are doors, for example, and we've got there the information about the door. At the moment, there's no real data behind it, but it's because it's still in design. So what we've now done though is we've then pulled this into PRP are producing fire drawings, and they're doing them within their models. And these fire drawings now we can pull into Active Plan, and we can have them as intelligent visually. Yeah, that is now Murphy's Law. There we are. So this will tell me what the fire compartment is in terms of its fire rating. So we can see that's a 120-minute fire compartment. And what we're going to be doing tomorrow is we're going to tie these all back, just as I was showing you earlier, to connect into the object itself. So the relevance of this is that it's this system-led approach that Paul was talking about earlier, that we've got the fire compartment and the asset. So if we've got this as both machine readable data, we can check that, you know, a 60-minute fire door in is at least in this case it's a 120-minute wall. And what we're also hoping to do is to also have the penetration seals sorted as well. So I just think this is one way that we could help a manufacturer to know where their products are going to be used, so they can be part of the argument, as it were, because the liability now on manufacturers, according to the conversation that Michael Gove had with the CPA in terms of responsibility, the manufacturers were arguing that they couldn't be held responsible for where their products were being used. And Michael Gove said, well, basically, we'll let the courts sort that out, or let the lawyers sort that out. So
Yeah,
I think I think the point, I guess my point is that that the manufacturers do need to have a little bit more engagement in that context, don't you think, Paul?
I don't know, what it is. I think the opportunity we have here is once we get, you know, should I say, that template are out, and you can sit there and go, you know, and I think what I'm going to try and do, because those diagrams I think work quite nicely, I'm going to try and do it against specific case examples, like a case study, to go, that's everything the manufacturer needs to have on their information to enable someone to go, oh, I can only put it there.
Mm.
You can't. I think the way to probably explain it is that to become a fire engineer, it might take you best part of 10 years to become an MIFE, right? But even then, your knowledge of products isn't probably as good as it could be, because you're not looking at products, you're looking at fire engineering of a complex building. You can't do all the products. A product manufacturer gets, you know, goes through a specific training, you would say, on how they do their maybe door or damper. They never touch the inherent fire engineering of the applicability of space. So you've got to somehow get everyone cross-educated to a point where there's a platform you can use to select it. And I think the only way you can do it is by the templating in BIM George, is that we have everything, you know, like those Excels that can possibly be there. So the manufacturer goes, well, this is the applicability of what it can do. Here you go. Is it applicable to what you want? Because otherwise, as I said earlier, is that, you know, I've got consultants going to manufacturers who've got some really good robust kit, because we've been paid for testing, and going, can I have a fire damper that, you know, fits on the face of a wall? And they go, here's one of these. But it's not appropriate for the type of wall it's fixed into.
Yeah.
Do you know, so it's how you get to that point where you can stop, you know, because I think it's, I don't know if I'm right in saying this, but when people feel that their information is going to be misused, that they generally don't want to give you as much information as they normally would.
I'm sure that's true.
You know, so you got to break kind of that stalemate where they go, this is everything we know, we believe you think you might want to do with it. Here's a list of it all. Just check you're happy with it, then come back to us, rather than, there you go, here's one of these. Because there's too many there's loads of variances of it all. So I think if you look at it from Go's point of view, if he started doing electron fire doors, I'd have to be there to watch it.
Yeah, don't hold your breath.
You know what I mean? Because this is the problem. I never realised how, you know, the knowledge was until you kind of get sucked into it over the last 2 years, and you realise, oh, geez, you know. So
we had a guy join a BIM for Housing session we had last week, where we had about 60 or 70 people on, didn't we, Richard? And this was landlords. It was, we had the National Fire Chiefs Council on it. This is the third of the sessions we've had with them. and this is about trying to preparation for the 23rd of January. And I met a guy at Homes UK 2 or 3 weeks ago, and he's amazing. He works in the House of Parliament, and he advises the MPs. He's a volunteer, but he's been doing it now for probably 3 or 4 years, and he was fantastic. He was so he's a good communicator, and what the reason I became interested in him is that he basically got a task of taking the Building Safety Act and summarize it to onto an A3 page. And he's done this in the past, and he's the one that's been answering the questions to, or he's been the one that's been educating the MPs and the people in the House of Lords. So we've recorded it. So
let's say specifically the Levelling Up Committee.
Oh, that's right.
Gove included, and he's been working on this for 3 years, but he's been working in the House of Commons and the House of Lords for 20 years.
Right. Sorry, Richard.
Sorry.
Yep. Yeah. But
I had it really well described to me. I was in the Institute of Civil Engineers a couple of weeks back, and they are on Great George Street. They're directly opposite the Treasury.
Yeah.
And they were saying we're 20 metres from the Treasury and we're 200 metres from the Houses of Parliament. And he says, and when they ask us for something and we send something to them, you would think it was like 20 miles and 200 miles, the distances they have to travel. And he says, and also that factor of 10 comes into account when you look at the inverse logic of their memory retention. He says, because House of Commons have memory retention of a goldfish, and the Treasury Treasury are still pretty stupid, but they're 10 times better than upstream. It was most amusing. But yeah, they do a lot of advising on transport policy, but they have to keep banging the same message out in order for it to sink in.
This guy, the reason this guy was so fascinating is that he has direct route. He speaks them. He speaks to Gove directly. And the guy who he was not very complimentary about pre-Gove with that brief time. We had some good stories we had to cut out of the video, put it that way. But he's actually putting together now a book which some of our members are actually reviewing the first quarter to get some feedback, that will do that with the Building Safety Act, break it all down with lots of, just make it very easy to understand. And more importantly, as he said himself, it will make it very searchable. If you're looking for something that mentions contractors, for example, you'll find it very quickly, and all the areas that cover. So amazing guy. We're going to be doing some more stuff with him moving forward.
No, nice.
Sorry, I'm interrupting.
No.
So coming back onto my pet project, the product library. If I just explain something that happened last week, I was invited to go down to the GS1 launch for construction. So does everybody know what GS1 is?
Nope.
Okay, GS1 is the international organization that manages barcodes worldwide. Yeah. So it's a not-for-profit, and what they do is they basically issue the barcodes that all the manufacturers use. So when people are selling trainers and things like that, that's where they get their that's where they get the barcodes from. And those it's a unique identifier. It's called GTIM, and they're coming into construction in a big way. And the manufacturers will then buy a product, buy a barcode register or a barcode from them, or a QR code or whatever. And that unique identifier then is for every single product that they produce. it's being included in BSI Identify. But it becomes universal because it's not actually behind any paywall. So it seems to me to be a no-brainer. Are you aware of it, Ian?
I've come across it in the past. I'm just desperately trying to think of the company that introduced me to it, who are doing some different work. But yes, when you mentioned it, I've heard of it, George, but I can't say I've got any expertise in it.
Okay, so what they're able to do, they go down to an individual SKU, an individual item, which is obviously where the wholesalers want that information, but they also group it up into, I think, for distribution into pallets and things like that. So all of that apparently is covered, and obviously they've been doing it for a long time in retail, so it's pretty robust, I would say. So the event that I went to, I was introduced to them by Travis Perkins about 6 months ago, and I've been discussing things with them over the period, and they are very interested. It was interesting because there was a guy there from Tata Steel who I know quite well, and he was saying that something like 80% of manufacturers of products that go into the construction industry employ less than 20 people, something like that. I mean, it was an extraordinary figure. I don't know, I can't verify that, but the point was that there's a lot of very small organizations and they need some help in getting their GTIMs. So if we can, the idea of having them just providing a PDF of their products, if we can then provide a simple way of them getting their GSI codes, then that could be a very good way of engaging with manufacturers. So that was so. Also at that session there was the Builders Merchant Federation. There was the Electrical Distributors Association. There was BEMA, which is the building services people. There was also ETIM, who are the ETIM is the standard for what all the wholesalers use for that's their classification system.
The European one, George.
Yes, worldwide actually. It's American. Yeah, yeah, it's American, but it is absolutely international. Yeah. So I think CBRE were presenting at it. So CBRE were basically promoting and endorsing it, and so were Travis Perkins. So I think that's a logical thing to follow through on. And I floated past anybody that listened to me the idea of having the a simple database, free database of product data sheets, and I got just 100% approval of it. So I think it's something that is we could probably get some very quick adoption with some support from people from the manufacturing end. Ian's obviously much more connected than I am in that area, but that was my view.
What would be the blockers, George? Why hasn't it been done before? What would stop it?
I think the major blockers are probably the people that make their money as information intermediaries. So people like MBS and the specified by and the like, because their business is about. And I'm not saying that they don't do a good job, because I think they do, but they're all competing with each other to be the product library of the industry, as it were. So therefore, what tends to happen is that people and they charge the manufacturers. So the manufacturers have to decide which products libraries they put their information into, and therefore you don't really know where to get it from. So it ends up being very fragmented, and they will still provide. MBS's principal role is on specification, and the way their information is structured is according to the way people will look for it when they're trying to specify a product.
And George, can just I'll jump in with this one as well, because I think for me, in my own, probably my own brain here, and do excuse because I'm a bit tired today, so I'm a bit exhausted. The bit that kind of really is the panacea for everyone is this kind of having that library is fantastic, and I think it'd be really, really good. And I just think the blocker is people's understanding of what it is and what it's for. That's half the battle. They just it's alien behaviour to them to think, well, what do I want that for? I think having that kind of a library where you've got, it all comes back down to this thing, as I sort of said earlier, where you've got all those key attributes in there as well, is the key part to it. Because the bit I'm missing in my own knowledge field, because one of the biggest things on competency is understanding what you don't know yourself, right? For me, it's how that kind of like template looks, in a library fashion. So just to ask the question, right? I'm just going to bring this back up again. This is the bit where I need help, and I think I need help with this PFKG thing, in relation to this from us as a group as well, is how I get. If I just go over here quickly, because this one's still work in progress, I'll go get Paul White to verify a few things. If I look at the BIM sheet I'll do smoke control because it's more complicated, is how I get, wait for it, how I get all of this in that as a kind of, there's a product, here's what it can do in practice, if you understand. Maybe that's the word I'm looking for. This is what its classification is, but this is what it does in practice. This is what it means. Does that make sense?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, because that's the bit I'm really struggling to get into a simple fashion, which is what the diagram, it's operational, so it's what the diagram represents, but it's how you get it in a template to go, that's what it kind of looks like.
Yeah, so the way that's done is that, for example, you've got time period 30, 60, 90, 120. That would be in what we call an enumerated list. So you'll be able to pick from those and then see the context of that in the template. So the point is that against any this is for a,
it's for a smoke control
duct.
Yeah, smoke control ducts. Yeah, because there's so many parameters that you need to know when you select it. It's
no, I appreciate that.
Yeah,
but so if I can just show my screen for the minute. Right,
yeah,
now
this is it. Yeah, so somebody camera holding.
Yeah, now
that's it bigger.
Let me make that bigger.
Yeah.
The fundamental problem that we've got is that for each of these asset types, here we've got a fire door, and here we've got a smoke damper, right? And all of this information in green, that is standard information that is constant, whatever the type of product. So if we get a data sheet for a fire door or a smoke damper, the information in green is going to be held, it's going to be added as a data set against that particular product. So it means that you're able to find, so the information about company name and model number and things like that, that will all be standard and then searchable. Okay. The information here that's in orange or pink is that's, again, standard information, but it's unique to an instance. So the first one is against a product type. The second is the thing that tells you that uniquely is for that particular item, that individual fire door or that individual smoke damper. Okay.
Mm.
The next level is the thing that makes it different. So a fire door, you wouldn't have things like blade edge or frame type, because that's relevant to a smoke damper, not a fire door. Now, this is the challenge that we've been wrestling with over the last few years in Lexicon and the other initiatives that we've been involved with. It's determining what additional attribute information we should be collecting for fire doors as opposed to smoke dampers. And this is the conversation that we've been having, I've been having with Ian, as to whether we use, for example, the essential characteristics, as they're called, in declarations of performance to simplify this, because that then ties you back. See, for example, in designers would want to know the maximum airflow rate for a smoke damper, but I don't know whether an asset manager would need to know that.
But you can just leave that just on that point, George. Sorry to jump in. This is the bit which is causing the big issue, right? Is that on the diagram I showed earlier with the classification, I showed basically a picture of an opposed blade damper, right?
Yeah.
So this is where this is the panacea. If we use smoke control dampers, if you're putting it in a basement and it's doing multiple rooms and it's doing general ventilation as well as smoke, there's only certain blade dampers that you can use to make that air work. But you can't necessarily use them if the systems are different classifications. It could be an MA system rather than an AA system. And that affects the type of blade, which affects your airflow. So what's happening is that when it goes to this dreaded word of CDP and they go, just give me a system in the basement for 10 air changes an hour at 300 degrees C, that's all they're declaring. And it is getting better. People are giving more information because we are educating externally. They go to a manufacturer and they go, here you go, here's a basic opposed blade damper and it's an AA system, there you go. And they go, I'll shove that in the spec, but it's not appropriate for the circumstance because no one's gone through that descriptive of the whole system.
Yep.
So the way I want to try and drive it is by having everything listed. And I think more isn't necessarily the wrong thing in this particular instance, because it's got to be used by someone that has the relative knowledge to go, okay, what options have I got? So, and I don't know if anyone's ever seen, and this was a good thing that Arab used to do years ago. I don't know if they still do it. They used to give data sheets with all the key attributes on it in a tick box. But I think they've stopped doing it. I haven't seen it for a long time, probably because I haven't dealt with them for a while. But to have that in the Pacific, probably in the asset Pacific type, all of that stuff listed, it forces someone then to click on it and go, well, actually, it's a smoke control damper. It's got to do 20,000 cycles of C mod. It's got to be MA. It's got to have this type of blade for this type of balancing. But all the things you can click are there, because you don't get curtain dampers on smoke control, but you'll get opposed blade, single blade, or parallel blade. Each has a different level of authority of control. This is where the complication comes into it, and this is the bit. Well, I've tried to dumb it down in the 5 items, but the bit that sits behind it is still quite complex, and I can't see any way of resolving it unless the BIM attributes are there. And
isn't that the point of the process that you're laying down? Because we're not going to fix all of this at once. At one, it's not all going to be fixed together, is it? And
no, I'm with you.
Process. I think that sort of the important thing is to look at the process you're laying down and start phasing. Because I think one of the fundamentals for me is, even if you go back to George's, the thing that George had up on there, we refer to door sets and doors in the same document there. But if you want, I'm sure it said door sets at the top, George, and then
yes,
just above that, and a door. is a door the component part of a door? Just so you know, we sort of end up falling down over, is it a product or a component? And one person's product might be another person's component, because, for example, the closer's a component on a door set.
You know, doors are quite complicated here, and I think everyone's underestimated doors because the dock ebb and part Q thing as well. So you are absolutely, in my view, spot on what you're saying. I think when it comes down to smoke control dampers, you can't add stuff to them. They're either A type, B type, C type. Do you understand what I mean? There's not like there's not like add-ons. That's why I think fire doors are more interesting. This is why I've tried to call them transient, because you move through them, if that makes sense. Where a smoke control system, we're trying to say, well, it's actually a dynamic function. It's extracting a hot gas. It can be used for compartmentation. It can be used for air balancing. And all those attributes have got to be fixed day one for the product to do what it says in practice. So I'm kind of looking at it and going, I need to get the manufacturers to a point as well, because the process will fail if any one part of it isn't completely thought through, because it's like a process within a process within a process, and it like it's sort of like a tree root, it stems out. So the one for me that I'm really desperate to get into a literal form to show it is how you do the attributes for something like a smoke control damper, what that selection list looks like. Because once people see it and feel it, they'll go, okay, now that makes a bit more sense, and how you're selecting it. Does that make sense?
It does. So can I just, right, so the what you've said there, Ian, if I just explain, it's a limitation of how Uniclass defines things. So if you look at Uniclass, there isn't a classification for fire doors. There's only one for fire door sets. And similarly, there's no classification for fire dampers. It's a fire and smoke damper.
Is that's because the product is the door set, and the other bits are really component parts thereof. If you think of the product as installed,
yes,
the product as in, and I think this is the question of where's the product fabricated, because and this is changing in terms of derogation from the EU as well, because they're starting to bring into scope on-site fabrication as a CE mark process.
Yes.
So and they see that as the way they've worded that in the consultation is to get round this what do they call it? It was a gap in the legislation, or that they perceive the sort of the fact that you can get away with building stuff on site and not applying a CE mark to the product as a workaround, or as some kind of a fudge, rather than a requirement. So I think there's a logic to saying that at this level we consider this to be a product, and these are components within the product, and you'll simplify a lot of this stuff if you start there. And it might be that you cascade beyond that, but I think you've got to start at a recognised product level, and at some point somebody takes responsibility as a package for either putting in a door set or fabricating a door set on site.
No, I agree. That's the issue about assemblies, isn't it? You know, and yeah. Sorry, go on, Paul.
Yeah, look, because what it is it's this is the fantastic thing. I love all of this. Is that, you know, you look at a fire door, you know, being transient with all the bits on it, and you look at a smoke control damper being static, and the possibilities are quite endless in what they do differently. So I think if you go back to that other sheet you had there with the Excel, the two Excels that were shown, George, quickly.
Yeah, but just all I was going to say is that you'll see here that what we've got within the templater, you can have multiple classifications against any asset type. So it means that I think Uniclass is great, but it's not sufficiently granular to do everything. So therefore, what we need to do is to make sure that it's horses for courses. And in terms of your attributes, Paul, here we've got 100 or so attributes, and these are just IFC attributes. These are really, they've just come through from FM. Sorry, from design, really.
Yeah.
Now, what we should be doing is manufacturers have got different attributes, and all of those can be put in here as well. And they're then provided as what are called property sets. So they're groups of properties that are there to fulfill a function. So here, for example, we've got this sort of common ones that would be applicable to any type of door. And, you know, whether it be a riser cabinet door or whatever. And then there's other information like maybe the type of information that you'd expect to get from a manufacturer. So it's that's what's behind. This is the technology that we built that's behind Lexicon. So we can add all of that information in due course. But the problem at the moment, because of the complication, we're not getting started. Whereas if we can just, in my view, if we can just have a data sheet with this additional information in it. Sorry, I'm back, Paul.
That's what I was going to say. This is what I was going to say. So see the one on the right. If you got that in Excel, you can send me.
Yeah.
If you send that to me, because what I'd like to do actually, and be honest with you, and I'm gonna ask you for a bit of help here, because I've actually got a bit of a nice lead into Christmas, because I can't walk. I've got to sit on the sofa. I'm stuck here till the beginning of the new year. So I've got a few big aims to get done for Christmas. One is to get this passive fire code into a bit of an order for PFKG, and I think we need to do a bit of cross pollination with some of this stuff. The other thing I want to do is I need to get this whole, because for me the linchpin is the bin part. Without the bin part, I can just see it all falling down, because you kind of need to have it so I do apologise with Doors, and my boy's he's having a right little gander over there on his own. I need to get the bin part in such an order that it actually prevents people from going off on a tangent back to reverting to type and going, oh, it's just all CDP. It's got to be done in such a way that if you do talk to a manufacturer, this list comes up and you go, well, just select what you want. And I think fire doors are harder than smoke control dampers, Ian, because you've got lots of different products that can go on the door. You might have a glass panel, you might have security, you might have a Z bracket, an L bracket, it might be motorized, might be a multi-lock. And you know,
well, I can give you access to this, which allows you to print off any. So this is the housing master list that we've created for housing developments. And in fact, actually, Martin, this is what we're using on Russian Park, which is one of your jobs. So what this allows you to do is to generate either a Word document or an Excel spreadsheet or a form. So if I just generate this is for a smoke damper.
Let's have a look. Perfect. I haven't seen one of these for a long while, George.
Yeah. So you'll see here, we've got the attributes that were selected against that.
Because you kind of need like a what I kind of looked at was like a passive fire attribute sheet where you've got everything in one place. So I mean, I can do a lot of
that can be a property set. So for example, what we've got here, we've got template attributes that have been added to this particular field. This is a way that the data can be used in an application. So I mean, obviously this is our application, but anybody can use the templates. So you'll see here that these are the attributes that have come through from the data templates, and there's potentially, there's 95 of them, and you can pick which ones you actually want to incorporate.
And I mean, to ask the question, George, right? I mean, it's a bit like if I just quickly whip this up.
Yeah. Well, I guess I'm saying is that we've got, that's a data dictionary, and that you can then pull together.
What I was trying to do, just move it over quickly. I didn't hide that. What I was trying to get to the point of, this is just a smoke control damper and a wall, but it's a bit like getting to the point where you have all these key attributes where you know how to click and select on the one that you want. And it's I've got to do it in such a way that I'm trying to marry up manufacturers to process as well. So when someone asks for something, they go, here's the list, rather than this is what we can offer you, here's the list, if that makes
Yes.
sense. And I think for fire door, I think fire doors, I need to think about it a bit different. That's why I need your help in with it, really. You know, maybe some other people's as well, because you've got the doc M, the doc Q part as well, which makes it a bit more interesting. Because say the transit, not static ones, are a bit easier. But one of the hardest ones to get right, funny enough, is just pipe work, because it's temperature, material, and insulin driven, which no one ever bothers about until it's too late. That's why that one goes a bit awry. So you've got to get it in such a way where
Okay.
you kind of remove people's ability to get it wrong.
I suggest we actually break this off, Paul. We can pick up on this. I'll introduce you to. Well, I think you've already met Paul Oakley, who joined us from BRE.
Yeah, I have. Yeah, no, he's doing all right though, Paul. Yeah, all good.
Yeah. So
good.
What I'll do is I'll get Paul to go through this with you, and then we can look at how you can put this into the templater. The other thing is that I met a guy. I went on a training course on Thursday that Sodexo had arranged for their engineers to be trained on doing fire door inspections. So I'm now, of course, having been on the course, I'm now a fire door expert, by the way. I hope that I've got a certificate now.
Yeah, I do like
that. But I mean, the amount of knowledge that the guy that was giving the course had was just immense. His name's Alan Oliver, and he set up a business called he used to run something called Checkmate. And he then went to right, okay, Ian, sorry. He then
I'm not disputing his knowledge at all.
Yeah. he was then at BRE, and now he's doing training, but the I guess I can plug him into as well, Paul, so we can get that, and also some of the other manufacturers of fire doors who have been extremely helpful in terms of our work. But to roll back on what I'd like to see if we can get underway in some ways, just the simple idea of a data sheet for every product that you're going to install. I guess the question is, how do we I can provide the platform to do it. We'll do it under the BIM for Housing banner, and it will be free. And I think what we can try and do is look at how we can provide some sort of funding for it, maybe from identifying some additional information services or something like that off the back of it. I've not really thought that through too much, but just providing a database of where people can put their data sheets, which then means that we've got a register that anybody can access and use.
Just for my benefit then, George, I'm just defragmenting everything that's gone on in the last hour. Would you say this is primarily, I'm just thinking about pitching this and selling it on, by the way, would you say this is primarily of use or a tool for people who are looking to replace products in buildings, like asset managers or FM contractors? Or is this primarily a tool for designers who are matching up their aspiration against the products that are available on the marketplace, or both?
I think it's definitely both, and there's a third group in there as well, and that's the people that are putting together your O&M information. So it's your procurement and the production of O&Ms.
But that should follow your design, shouldn't it?
Yeah.
If that's if that's the
I
design,
agree.
the designer's gone through the process and then selected from the free library, for want of a better
Yes.
word, something that meets his criteria.
Yes.
You then follow up with, yeah, we put it in. Here's a photo to prove it, and here's the O&M manuals saying that's what went in. That's the golden thread, isn't it?
That's exactly it. So yeah, yes, most definitely. And I've also been through it with Sodexo, and they're very keen on it. They would be very keen on receiving that type of information. I mean, why wouldn't they?
Yeah. I'm just because I'm like that, looking at blockers, and thinking why people wouldn't do this and who would abuse it, and immediately my mind goes to PMQSs or doing cost comparisons on similar products. You know, that sort of thing that might go on.
Well, all we're talking about at the moment is a data sheet that the manufacturers would provide anyway. So all we're talking about is a library of PDFs of what they would normally issue.
Yeah.
It's just we're making it easier for that to be
but there will be there are people out there who will play amateur designer and say there's a cheaper one here, it's made in China.
Martin, that's the whole thing about the templater. That's the bit I want to try and prevent, because you know, it's you've got some really strange things going on at the moment. You've got, and you can understand this, you've got MEP, you know, building services contractors, should I say, that are going, I'm just going to go for, or a Trox or a Mandic, all singing, all dancing, does everything it says on the tin, you know, and I'm going to shove it in. But actually, it's not appropriate for where you're putting it, because they're longer, they're not thinner, they cause secondary problems, all the rest of it. And you know, the PQS is, you know, what they will do is they will just go, well, actually, I've got this one here, which is an FD, and it's 100 quid. Your one's 600 quid. Yeah, I've got to get that descriptive line done in such a way that if anyone tries to change it in the VE Ripple, when it's not VE, it's cost management, because you know the capex is going down, you go, well, it's different to that number that's been selected by a fire engineer, building services consultant, an architect, and there's a, you know, the specialist within the tier one, whoever, that meets the thread. If it doesn't do that, you can't select it. And what you're finding is,
and if you change it, you become the designer.
And if you change it, you've got to go back to basically stage 2, you know, effects, because the ripple of it affects everything else. But that's the bit. And when you look at this problem, it's actually also, I'm not trying to say it like I'm being silly about it. It's actually all so simple, but it's actually, as you say, the PQS. It's to quote a friend of mine, Charlie Versey, he says it quite well. It's many conflicting motivations by many conflicting people that causes the issue. Everyone's got a different driver.
Yeah.
And you need something where you go, no, what driver you've got. Once you've gone for that process at the start and you've locked it in descriptively, and you've got everything set around the walls as well, you can't just go, well, that one's cheaper, because it's got to tick the same boxes as that. And if it doesn't,
but if it does, people are going to start selecting the one that's cheaper, aren't they?
Well, if it's cheaper and it ticks all the same boxes and it's appropriate for the circumstances, who am I to complain? I'm like that. I'm with you. Just go for it. But if it doesn't select those boxes, you've got to go back to first principles. Then it's like when you look at the analogy of BG6, and it says, well, if someone's selecting alternatives, the consultants go, well, I'm getting my hands off of it. It all goes back to that initial problem where someone goes away and misses with the inertia what it did originally. It's like I'm so interested in ventilation, because the minute you do something that affects pressure drop, you've messed with your Part L calculation. There's nowhere to go. You can't derogate Part L. It is what it is. You must achieve X, Y, and Z. It's the only one in the Building Act you cannot mess with. The rest of them you can. So you just can't mess with 2 watts a litre. I've got jobs, Martin, where we've gone for like the higher rates of 1.6 litre a watt of air delivered, and it's all the wrong kit. Do you know what I mean? It just doesn't work, and it's like you're going to be at 3 watts the way you're going, and it's like the body's too big for the skin, because everyone's gone off on such a tangent over cost. It's like they're cutting the fat off of something than it was in the first place. So It's getting it to that order.
Paul, in terms of sort of next steps, do we need, like, because we've got the Walls as a system, so we've got Walls as a system group mirroring the passive fire knowledge group. Would it be sensible just to sort of set up small working groups and look at each class of product and say, right, what level do we need for each of these class of products? Because as I say, otherwise we can sort of, and if we start with sort of focusing on the fire critical stuff, that's the most important thing.
Yes.
Then so some of the other stuff can follow. We can use sort of some exemplar at this level covering these attributes, and then the other things can start to come through. And I know that's sort of paring it back a little bit, but at least we'll get something achievable in the short term. And and actually, I suspect we might find out that if you, not everything is possible with everything. Do you know what I mean? Sort of actually, quite often there might be no magic product that does all of those things.
No, I mean, look, this is why I need the help, Ian, because I think that the habitual habit is we try to make complex less complex, and I've tried to make all of that really into that really for one, how you do one product. But the reality is that when you start looking, as you say there, with interface between all of these different groups, for me is that you need workbooks for each individual subject. So if it's a door, it needs a workbook. If it's a damper, it needs a workbook. And the workbook enables you to get the classification information right. The common denominator is comparing all of that against the system design.
And it's not wrong to set somebody else a problem, though, is it? So if we say, look, at the door set, if you take door sets as an example, say at the door set level, this is the information that we expect, because this is what you're setting down here, isn't it? An expectation of information. Then actually, if you're building an assembly, it's over to you to prove how you're doing this. It's your problem.
I think you're right. I think the hard bit is it's that I've generated these for probably 4 subjects, and I get Paul White to verify that he thinks we're on the right track. So I know I've got a robust sort of list, and it gets quite complicated when you start doing the comparison with the wall, because you've got to get that wall type right to suit what you're doing. But then you've got to compare them all in a platform like here, where all of those different workbooks are listed out with a common wall type, so you can get the coordination of the system. And the thing is, if you know how to do it, it's probably quite simple, but I don't know. I haven't looked at fire doors habitually like I've say with the damper or the ductwork or the smoke control products, because they're all, in fairness, they're all static. When you start looking at the doors, it is all the assembly where you've got, the part Q, the security stuff. Because you look at habitual flowing contracts, is that you'll have an MEP contractor that comes on working for us as a tier 1. He goes to a specialist contractor for security. He goes out and looks at a strategy for doing security, comes back and says, I'm going to put Mortise red locks in all the doors. And you go, well, the doors were procured 6 months ago. And you go, that's no good, is it? And you've got to get to that point where you know before you're procuring the door that without that information being in that classification box, you can't proceed with it.
That's your limit. The words you use, Paul, is applicability and limitations. So the 2 words I've written down that are key. Yeah. Because actually, what you're doing is you're setting a limitation. You're saying that actually, if this is specified, you can't come and do that in a later stage.
Yeah. Once you've done, your
limits are set now. If you want to do that, fine. But you're going to have to go and what you're not doing is installing the products that we've developed. You're installing something else, and you now need to develop that. And then you say, who's responsible? This is where the role of the fabricator is missing in construction. You get so confused. Is it an installation operation or is it a fabrication installation operation?
Ian, can I? Right. So what I'm trying to do at the moment is simplify some of the stuff that we've been doing over the last 3 or 4 years, and obviously not replicate it. So if we look at the work that we've done, which I think most of you have seen this before, but within the Golden Thread Initiative and BIM for Housing, we ran workshops for 12 asset types, and this one's the fire door one. So we had 20 or 30 people who have got expertise in fire doors actually working up what risk is the fire door mitigating, What do people do to a fire door to stop it from working? What information is required? So these are the key things that were considered to be important by the collection of experts. So there's a hell of a lot of information here that has already been collected in a raw format for construction, installation, maintenance, etc. And then what tasks do people need to carry out? So all of this is available to us to then turn into reusable data templates, but we don't have the funding to be able to necessarily translate all of that. So what I'm trying to get to is something that's we can use this information and build on it, make it better. But at the moment, we're stuck with the templates as being this exercise of saying, you know, what information do we want to collect for which purpose? And that's why I'm suggesting that we get the thing off the ground by simply saying, let's have a library of data sheets. And we hold against those data sheets the information about who the manufacturer is, the model number, etc. And then we can gradually build. People become then interested, don't they? Because at the moment, what's been happening, we've been having the conversations with Lexicon and BIMHawk and other initiatives, and it's all a bit non-specific. Whereas if we can actually say, right, we've got a library of the smoke dampers that are being provided, and we've got them from 2 manufacturers. We've got a library of data sheets. Let's say to those people now, let's coalesce around that and say, what additional information do we actually want? What properties do we actually need? And it gets it underway. That was my thought.
Good thought, George.
Sorry, Ian?
Yeah, no, I'm in agreement with George. I think the work. I think the work that Paul's talking about needs to carry on at the same time. But like you said, it could be the thing that unifies and brings people together.
You need that bit. You need that bit to bring it. You kind of like. I don't think you'll ever get construction to function in the perfect world. You're always going to get a fire engineer, an architect, a building services engineer. You just got to bring it together in such a way that the platforms make it easier for them to get it right. The hard bit, I think, will be, and I think you kind of indicated earlier, Martin, is that are people going to abuse it the wrong way? And how do you continuously keep it maintained will be the hard bit. But at the moment, no one's actually got a defined list when they go and buy a smoke damper from a company of everything that they want from it. Do you know what I mean? We've got the information, but
abuse, Paul. I think that this isn't happening in isolation either, is it? And the things you said up front is the problems people are going to get a gateway 2 and gateway 3 unless they line this stuff up.
Yeah.
I mean, look at that. I mean, I don't know if anyone's looked at the consultation for the building control approval process, but you kick back a gateway 2, you've got 12 weeks from submission of resubmission to the building control officer to decide if works can proceed. So who pays for that 12 weeks? And if you go back after 12 weeks and you're still a bit unsure, you've got another 12 weeks in your program.
Yeah.
Who the hell's going to pay for that?
It's not even clear what that level of information is. If you actually look at the list of information presented, actually it looks quite straight. 90% of it is pretty straightforward. It's all available. And then you have statements such as provide such plans that demonstrate in an unambiguous way that you're fully compliant with building regs. Well, what the hell does that mean?
Yeah.
But so, I mean, look. Here's the classic one, right? Is that I love this. This is a great example, right? You've got a big office building going up, and even if it's not, one of the high-rise risk buildings, right? You get into a conflab of building control. They go to the regulator. They come down. They say, how have you got to the conclusion this is fine? You're going to get that problem. That's the other one. But the thing is, when you look at structures, no disrespect to structural engineers, they can design a structure pretty quickly. the fact is that if you've got big riser out turns and things on buildings where you've got massive ducts going through and big fire doors, and no one's gone for the relative process of actually going, the duct's too big for the water support. I can't put a fire door underneath it because I can't put, jams top to bottom, and actually get to the conclusion, actually, drywall's not appropriate for that location. It should be block. Structure's designed. Building control are not going to see that because they're going to say to you at Gateway 2, are you happy that the building's coordinated? You're going to go, well, here's a structure, we're happy it's fine, and these are the calculations. They don't know about all the other lead-on components, because you can see even on the government website, it says you'll be able to do things in a phased approach for big complex jobs, because you can't do it all at once. So that's where.
But some of this goes back to something that's a big theme for me at the moment: design program and sufficient time. It's always going to be an iterative process. Do we have enough time typically? No, of course we don't, because everyone assumes it's a nice, straightforward, linear process. It never can be.
Cool. Shall I call it a draw there, guys?
So-
I'm going
to stop recording.
Are we on the same page that we ought to be trying to promote this out? Martin, are you okay with us having